Hungarian folk tales. Bees on the train. Once upon a time there was a large farm, and on that farm lived a man who had relatives from another village who came to visit him one day. They did not want to arrive empty-handed, so they brought him a gift of honey. The honey was quickly eaten with big chunks of fresh bread and was soon all gone. But while they sat eating, they discussed what a fine thing it was to keep bees and how simple it was with such rich rewards. The man could hardly wait for the next farm gathering, where he suggested they should buy bees to make honey. The head farmer agreed and asked if there was anyone willing to work with bees. A man stood up and said he knew all there was to know about bees. He also told them that he knew where to buy bees if that was what they wanted, and everyone cheered with joy. They worked out how much money to give the man, and he set off to buy bees for the farm. He bought as many hives as he could put on a train. Then he had the whole car covered in red cloth and had red clothes and a red hat made to wear. He soon made friends with the bees and spoke to them. He opened the door, and the bees came and went as they pleased. When they were halfway back to the farm, the train drove into a sidetrack, and the engine left. So the man asked the station master, "Why has the engine gone?" "Because," the station master said, "it was ordered to leave." "How long will the train be in the station?" "Who am I to know that?" "Don't talk to me like that, kind sir, because if I know that the train will be staying here for a whole day long, then I will let my bees out so they can have some air and food." "The train will remain for at least 3 days more," the station master told him. The beekeeper went out and opened up the hives. Come out, children, and have some air. Find food for yourselves and return to your hives in time for the sunset." The bees had barely left when suddenly the station master had an order to start the train again. The beekeeper saw from the top of the carriage that the engine was coming and the train was hooked up, and they sat waiting for the station master's signal to start. The beekeeper ran to complain. "What is all of this? You never told me about this, station master, but I received an order to start the train. But that's impossible. My bees are still in the field. They cost a fortune." "What am I to do with your bees?" the station master replied. "I am a station master and not a beekeeper." "Well, at least leave the carriage with the bees here in the station so it can be coupled up with another train tomorrow." "That's impossible." And with these words, he started the train, which left the station with the bees' carriage. The beekeeper also left in his red clothes. While most of the bees were busy gathering honey, they sent a small party back to see if all was safe with their carriage in the station. Well, when they arrived, they saw that the train had taken their hives away. They returned to the meadow and told the others that their carriage had vanished. So all of the bees flew back to the station, and when they arrived, they found people waiting for a passenger train. Well, the bees thought that these people had stolen their hives, and so they stung them and stung them. The people cried out for help. The station master heard their calls, so he rushed out of his office, and he too was attacked by the angry swarm. His wife heard his cries and opened the window to see what was wrong. And as she opened the window, the bees rushed in and stung her so badly that she cried louder than all the rest. The station master heard this, and he ran upstairs to find out what had happened to his wife. And then he saw that the whole room was filled with bees. The two of them had to hide under a blanket to save their skins, but both were badly stung and their faces sadly swollen. The people waiting for the train all ran back to their homes, but the swarm of bees flew after them. The other villagers heard their shouts and ran out into the street. "Help! The village is being attacked by bees!" And they rang the big bell. The station master eventually came to his senses and he called for the train to be sent back to the station, and it soon reappeared on the platform. The beekeeper, still dressed all in red, climbed on top of the carriage and started to call the bees back. "Come on, children, your hives are here." The bees, hearing their master's voice, gathered together and flew back in an orderly fashion. Those that had survived the bloody battle made their way quietly back into their hives. Then the beekeeper went to see the station master, but he could hardly recognize him. "You deserved whatever happened because you spoke to me so rudely." But the beekeeper eventually forgave the station master, and the beekeeper went back to the farm and laughed when he recalled what had happened that day. The bees soon started to make honey on the farm and made more money than all the farmers and animals put together. From then on, life on the farm was sweet. Hungarian folk tales. The Simple Prince. Once upon a time there was a farmer, and the farmer had 3 sons. One of his sons was very simple, and he was the youngest. One day the farmer went into the farmyard and saw that someone had scattered the straw all over the place. So he busied himself and tidied everything up. Then the farmer told his sons, "This can't go on. Someone has to keep the straw in order." On the first night, the eldest son went out to the yard to watch the straw. But the boy became hungry and began to eat. All of a sudden, a tiny mouse appeared and sat staring at the boy. So the boy took off his hat and trapped the mouse, but the mouse vanished. Then the oldest son felt drowsy and he fell fast asleep. And when he woke the following day, he saw that the straw had been thrown around the yard again. The following evening, the middle son went out to guard the straw in the farmyard. He was eating his supper when the mouse appeared. He also tried to catch the mouse with his hat, but the mouse vanished. So the boy went to sleep. And when he woke again the following morning, the straw was messy again. On the third day, it was the youngest son who went to the yard. His elder brothers teased him and insisted that he was too stupid to guard the straw. But young John still went out and sat in the yard. The little mouse appeared and stared at the boy. Then young John saw the mouse and gave it a bite to eat. The little mouse said to him, "Young John, if you are clever and do as I say, the straw will be neat and tidy by morning." A horse comes into the farmyard at night and it kicks the straw around. But you mustn't be afraid. I will give you a bridle and you must throw it around the horse's neck and sit up on its back. So young John did as the mouse had said. When the horse appeared that night, he threw the bridle around its neck and sat high up on its back. The horse tried to run into the straw, but young John held it tight. The horse soon realised that young John was too strong for it and it would never get into the straw. And then all of a sudden, the horse began to speak. "As you were so brave, I shall give you 3 whistles. If you blow one of them, a horse will appear in the blink of an eye with a uniform for you to wear." Then the horse gave him a copper whistle, a silver whistle, and a golden whistle. When he returned home, young John said to his father, "I kept the straw safe, it's still neat and tidy." So then the father addressed his other 2 sons. "You see, you said he was the simplest of you all, and yet he was the only one who managed to guard the straw." The king's beautiful daughter had made up her mind to marry, and she set the following challenge. In front of the castle stood a mighty glass mountain, and on top of that a solitary pine. And on the highest branch there was a slipper that perfectly fit the princess's foot. And the young princess announced that she would marry the man who could bring the slipper back to her. Brave young men from all 4 corners of the land came to try their hand, and young John's brothers went up to the palace to see who would get the slipper. John wanted to join them too, but they refused to take him. Then John had an idea. "You go, my brothers, I shall be there anyway." Then young John blew the copper whistle, and a copper horse appeared with a gleaming copper uniform. John put the clothes on, climbed up on the horse, and rode towards the glass mountain. When the princess saw him, she sighed and said, "I wish it were him who could pick up my slipper," but he only rode halfway up and back down again. When his brothers got home, they told him what they had seen. "I saw it too, from the top of the wall." His brothers were angry with him, and they knocked the wall down to stop him spying on them. The competition continued the following day, and his brothers attended again. This time John blew his silver whistle. This time a silver horse appeared with a sparkling silver suit, and when he rode up in front of the palace, the princess was even keener for him to win. But young John only managed to ride halfway up and down again. At home, his brothers told him what they had seen. John said, "I saw it too, from the barn roof." And his jealous brothers burned the old barn down. On the 3rd day, his brothers went again to see the competition. Now John blew the golden whistle, and a golden horse appeared with a glistening golden uniform. The young princess saw him at once. "This is the last day," said the princess. "I hope he will bring my slipper back." John rode all the way up to the top. He picked up the slipper and disappeared over the other side of the mountain, taking the golden slipper with him. The princess was sad because she had no idea where the handsome hussar had gone. Young John returned home. Then his brothers arrived back and told of what they had seen. They said they had seen a brave hussar, better still than the 2 before, who had ridden up to the top of the glass mountain, picked up the golden slipper and vanished down the other side. And they said the princess looked sad. Then young John said, "I saw everything too from the corner of the house." His brothers were so furious that they knocked the old house down. The king issued a decree that the young man possessing the golden slipper should present himself at the palace at once. But nobody came. Then they began to search the homes of the local people, and they also searched young John's house. "Is there anyone else living here?" they asked the 2 brothers. "There is another boy, but he is no more than a simple fool." "That is no matter," they said. "We want to see him too." Young John had a little bag that he always carried wherever he went. They searched the bag and found the golden slipper. His brothers were stunned by the sight, and they had no idea how he had come to have the princess's slipper. Then they were ordered to take young John to the palace, where he was to marry the pretty princess. The king's men asked John where was the suit he was wearing when he picked up the slipper. Then young John blew all 3 whistles, and all 3 horses appeared with all 3 suits. Then young John put on the golden uniform and gave the other 2 to his brothers. Then he presented the slipper to the princess, and the wedding festivities began. The wedding party was so very jolly that I think they may still be making merry to this very day. Hungarian folk tales. The Hedgehog. Once upon a time, there lived a merchant, a king, and a poor man. The merchant often went hunting in the forest, and one day he became so very lost that he wandered around for 3 whole days, unable to find his way home. He said, "Oh, if only someone would show me the way out, I'd give him the hand of the most beautiful of my 3 daughters in marriage and 3 sacks of gold. I'll show you the way out if you follow me." The merchant looked down at his feet and saw a snuffling hedgehog. Then the merchant was forced to promise the hedgehog his most beautiful daughter's hand and 3 sacks of gold if he would lead him out of the forest. Then the hedgehog set out, followed by the merchant, and they reached the edge of the forest in no time. The following day, the king also went hunting in the forest, and he also got lost, much like the merchant the day before. The king said, "If only someone would show me the way out, I'd give him the hand of the most beautiful of my 3 daughters in marriage, along with 3 carts of gold." "I'll show you the way out if you follow me." The king looked around to see where the voice was coming from and then saw the hedgehog by his feet. He was so anxious to get out of the forest that he couldn't care less who it was, so he followed the hedgehog and they soon reached the edge of the forest. The following day, the poor man also got lost in the forest. "Oh dear, I have nothing to my name, but even if an ugly beast showed me the way out of this forest, I would willingly adopt it as my own dear child." "I'll show you the way out if you follow me," a voice said. The voice, of course, came from the hedgehog, and it led the poor man to the edge of the forest in no time at all. Time passed, and the merchant, the king, and the poor man had almost forgotten about the little hedgehog. One night, after the poor man had gone to bed, someone knocked on his window. "Father dear, please open the door for me." Who can that be, the poor man wondered, because he knew he had no children. "Hello, Father, I finally come home," the hedgehog said. "Welcome, son, I'm happy you're here," said the poor man. "I am too, and would you please wake my dear mother to make my bed for me?" "Father dear, do you have 2 pennies?" the hedgehog asked. "Yes, I do, my son," said the poor man. "Well then, please go into town, and in the marketplace you'll find a very old lady selling a black cockerel." "Buy it for me," said the hedgehog. "Then go to the saddler, who has a worn-out saddle, and buy that for me too." So the poor man went into town, bought the black cockerel and the worn-out saddle, and took them home, where the hedgehog saddled the cockerel, climbed up onto its back, and rode away as fast as the wind. The hedgehog didn't stop until it reached the home of the merchant, where it said, "Merchant, sir, open the door and let me in." The merchant nearly fell over backwards when he saw the hedgehog, but he had to let it in. Then he called his 3 daughters and told them of the promise he had made to the prickly creature. The merchant's daughters cried and cried, but the hedgehog paid no attention and chose the most beautiful girl, and tried to comfort her with the following words. You are mine, and I am yours, till death do us part. But the pretty girl refused to repeat his words and cried so much that she threw herself down on the ground. But protest as she might, the girl was forced to leave home with the hedgehog. Then the merchant harnessed the horses, put 3 sacks of money into another cart, and off they went with the hedgehog proudly riding its black cockerel alongside. Are you still crying? I am, and I will cry until my dying day. In that case, said the hedgehog, go back to your father. But the hedgehog kept the 3 sacks of gold and took them home to the poor man. Time passed until the day eventually came when the hedgehog saddled its black cockerel and rode off to visit the king of the land. The hedgehog told the king why it had come, hoping the king remembered his promise. I only wish I had forgotten, but I haven't, and I always keep my word, said the king. He called his 3 daughters and sadly told them what had happened to him in the forest, and now this prickly creature had come here to pick his most beautiful daughter for his wife. It may think I'm the most beautiful, but I refuse to be a hedgehog's wife. I'd rather die than be a hedgehog's wife. I'll be only too happy to be its wife because it was so kind to my dear father. The king was happy and sad at the same time. He was glad one of his daughters had turned out to be so kind-hearted, but was sad to lose his only kind-hearted daughter. The king loaded silver, gold and diamonds onto 3 carts, harnessed horses to the royal coach, and the princess climbed in. The hedgehog, however, did not go in the coach, but rode alongside on the black cockerel. They had been riding for many hours and were far away from the palace when the hedgehog looked into the coach and was surprised to see the princess happy and not crying. She said, "Why do you insist on riding that black cockerel instead of sitting beside me here in the coach?" "Aren't you afraid of me?" the hedgehog asked. "Why should I, when I know you will do me no harm?" she replied. "Don't you find me ugly?" asked the hedgehog. "Of course not," the princess replied. Then a miracle happened. The hedgehog shook itself and immediately turned into a tall and handsome prince who beamed brighter than the sun. Then the cockerel shook itself and turned into a fabulous stallion. And a palace appeared with walls and windows made of sparkling diamonds. Then they sent for the king, they sent for the poor man, and they sent for everyone in the land to join them at their wonderful wedding feast. And they all lived happily ever after.